In my copy of the scriptures, he's got essentially one open face of text in the English language and a little bit on the next page. That's basically all he has. So again, minor prophets, what is that? It is a prophet that does not write a lot of material. And so that's kind of what we have in Habakkuk. He begins this particular passage, this book that he wrote, the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. Habakkuk is one of the very few writers of the Bible in which we really know absolutely nothing about the penman. We don't know anything about him. We know his name, Habakkuk. That's about it. Where was he from? We don't know. Many times the writer will say, Micah, Nahum, Elijah, and then give where they were from. Habakkuk didn't even give that. The burden, and I'm the prophet. That's all we get from Habakkuk. Now we can place, because of his writings, we can put him kind of in chronological order, who are his contemporaries, but really other than that, that's about all we can do with this prophet. Let me say one more thing before we get into Habakkuk as the individual, which is very brief, by the way, is that when the scriptures, especially the New Testament, because really the Old Testament had already been compiled even well before Jesus. You might recall that Jesus was reading the scriptures in the Old Testament scriptures in Greek. It's known as the Septuagint, okay? It actually came out of Alexandria, Egypt, by the way, if you're keeping track. And so Habakkuk was in the Septuagint. Well, when you look at all of the Old Testament writings, from the writings of Moses all the way through the prophets, and then further into the Gospels, and that is the New Testament, they pass a certain test. As a matter of fact, it's a series of tests. And so we have 66 books, 39 in the Old, 27 in the New. How did we come up with 66 books in the Bible? We came up with these books because they pass all of the tests needed for canonization. And so there are rigorous tests that they must undergo. First of all, they have to say that they are inspired by God. Notice then what Habakkuk claims in the very first verse. The burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. You see, he's not saying that it's his word, is he? This prophecy came to him from where? Verse 2, the Lord. So, a test of canonization, a test of, is this book, ought it be in the Bible? Does it give credit to God as being the one who inspired those particular scriptures? The only one where you could say, now wait a second, I'm not 100% sure, would be Esther. And yet, it passes other tests. So, they pass all of those tests that are given. Okay, into then the book of Habakkuk. Nothing is known of this man. His name, that's all we get. He is thought to be contemporary with, because of what he says and just the area that he is writing here, the prophecy that he's prophesying, who he's prophesying against, so to speak. He is thought to be contemporary with Nahum, Jeremiah, and Daniel. So this gives you the idea then that he's right here when Nebuchadnezzar is getting ready then to go against Egypt and Pharaoh Necho, in which Josiah, the king of Judah, foolishly allies himself with the remnant of Assyria and Egypt, and then Assyria is taken, Egypt is taken, and it's just a few years for recuperation of Nebuchadnezzar and the Chaldeans, the Babylonian Empire, by the way, to come and then take Jerusalem. And by the way, Assyrians, as cruel as they were, it took them 3 years to take Samaria. Jerusalem, which was in an infinitely stronger position than Samaria ever thought about being in, 2 years. Siege, Nebuchadnezzar took the city of Jerusalem. And again, when you go to Jerusalem, it doesn't matter from whatever direction you are coming, because it's in the mountains. You are going in which direction? Up. When you want to have a walled city, and the most defensible walled city, where do you want it? High up. That's exactly what Jerusalem was. It was high up. And yet, God gave strength to the Chaldeans, to the Babylonians, and they're one and the same, by the way, and they took Jerusalem in not 3 years, but 2 years. All right. His prophecy came directly after Nahum, then prophesied. We talked about Nahum last week. 2 passages are quoted from the book of Habakkuk, and that is Acts 13:41. The Apostle Paul then quoted chapter 1, verse 5, "Behold ye among the heathen in regard, and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told you." And then Romans 1:17, "The just shall live by faith." Right after he says, in Romans 1:16, he says, "I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. And it has been revealed from faith to faith, as it is written." Where is it written? Habakkuk 2:4. "The just shall live by faith." And so this book it should be in the canon. It is quoted by the Apostle Paul, written down by Luke in Acts 13:41, and then written down and quoted by the Apostle Paul in Romans 1:17. Let's look at chapter 1 of Habakkuk's prophecy. Habakkuk, then, a righteous individual, is asking God a question. "O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? I even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. Why dost thou show me iniquity, and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are that raise up strife and contention. Therefore the law is slack, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous. Therefore wrong judgment proceedeth." You see, this is the very reason why Judah was destroyed. Because the law did not do anything. It did not protect the innocent any longer. There was no justice in the land of Judah. Not anymore. And it all depended on how much money you had. Those who were wealthy never got in trouble. Those who were poor always got in trouble. That's no justice system whatsoever. Sometimes we think we have it bad. Listen, we have it so good, we don't even know. Everybody has it so good in this nation, we don't even know. Not in Judah, not at this time. There was not one person, if you didn't have coin, let me tell you, there wasn't one person that had any justice whatsoever. They were all trampled underfoot. The only way that they could get out of something is if they sold themselves in slavery. That was about the only way that they could get out of something. Would you want to live during that time? Would you want to live in Jerusalem and in Judah and in that day and age? I would not. No. Habakkuk's asking then, God, for how long are you going to endure this? This is a terrible situation. God, don't you see this is a terrible situation? Do you think God had eyes? Do you think God had ears? Could he not tell that this was a terrible situation? Here's Here's what many then fail to realize. And this is a hard statement. This is so difficult because people don't realize that God is not the God of me right now, but He is the God of in my time. That's when I'm going to take care of things. I do not pick up my spiritual red phone when something's going wrong in my life. God, I need you 5 minutes ago. But that's how people want to treat the God of heaven. Folks, human beings don't have a red phone. It doesn't exist. You might as well talk to the brick walls, because God is going to take care of things, and He will take care of them, but in His time, because His plan is seen from eternity, not my pitifully short life. He's not going to do it, and neither should He, because He's the God of heaven, and quite frankly, I am not. And so I cannot use God in that way. And so many people, God doesn't exist because when I pick up that imaginary red phone, He doesn't answer me. He doesn't have to answer you, folks. He doesn't have to. He's not beholden to you. Now, Habakkuk does ask a good question, and I think all of us need to ask that question. Lord, how long are you going to have this situation, this terrible, evil situation, to continue? I think that's still a valid question, and we need to know the answer. Then God gives Habakkuk and the people an answer. Now, the thing about asking God a question is, when God answers us, you probably want to sit down, have a seatbelt on, and strap in, right? Because again, when God answers us as human beings, is it always going to be the way we want Him to answer us? Is that answer always going to be, get this, in my personal favor? Am I always going to be the beneficiary of that answered prayer? When you go to God in prayer and you say, Father, not my will, but thy will be done. Let me tell you, did His only Son, did He not pray that prayer? Not my will, but thy will be done. He prayed that, did He not? In the Garden of Gethsemane, how many times did He pray that? At least 3 on that particular occasion. Now, don't you know, for His whole life, He prayed that prayer? Don't you know He did? Because He knew His whole life where He was headed. Father, not my will, but your will be done. And what happened to the Lord Jesus Christ? He went to the cross and He died. Who benefited from Jesus the Christ dying on the cross? You see how that works? You ask God for something, you pray to Him for something. The answer might even be yes. But I'm not going to benefit you, I'm going to benefit someone else. Praise be God's name. Now, folks, if you can praise the name of God for someone else benefiting from your prayer, that's faith. That's real faith. That's the kind of faith that God wants us to have. Not my will, but thy will be done. Verse 5 and 6. Behold ye among the heathen, and regard, and wonder marvelously. For I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told you. For lo, look, He's saying, look, I'm going to answer your prayer, but you're not going to believe me. These pitiful people, the Chaldeans, verse 6, that bitter and that hasty nation, that rabble-rousing, no good for nothing, that lot over there, guess what? I'm going to raise them up. And they are going to march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. While they're terrible and dreadful, their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. I'm going to give them strength where there is no strength. I can only imagine being Habakkuk and seeing the lay of the land and how Assyria up in the north, Egypt down in the south, Judah squished right there in between all these folks. How they see the might of all those armies. You know, it had not been too much earlier, and Egypt had mustered over 1 million soldiers. Not people, soldiers. Egypt. 1 million soldiers to go against Judah. Judah won, by the way. And these folks out of Babylon and the Chaldeans, they were going to come over and defeat those nations? No, not them. Anyone but them. You're not going to believe me, even if I told you. Those are the very words of God. And they didn't. How can you punish the heathen? Verse 12. Art not thou from everlasting, O Lord my God, mine Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. Thou hast ordained them for judgment. The Chaldeans are the ones that should die, not your people. Don't you know how good we are, Lord? And, Almighty God, thou hast established them for correction. Thou art of pure eyes then to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he? That's the problem with humanity. Right there. Because let me tell you something, I'm a lot better than more than half the people on this planet. Matter of fact, if I really want to look at it, I'm probably in the upper 2%. Isn't that the human, how we look at it? Why, we want to compare one with another, don't we? I know I've done some wrong stuff, but it's not anything compared to what that person over there's done. Do you know what he did? Not even close. And yet that's how God's people, that is, that's how the Jews looked at themselves. Oh, we can get away with murder, and it's okay because we're God's people. You see, that's not how God looks at things. He looks at sin as sin, regardless of the person committing it. And one that commits sin and does not repent of that sin is going to be lost. That's just all there is. And so here are the people of God that have the wrong idea. You are our God. Now remember, here's the ancient way of thinking of things. When your God is more powerful than all the other gods, then you become the conqueror, not the conquered. But how many times did the God of heaven teach these folks that that was not the case? They had to obey him in order to be the conquerors. They never got it, did they? Did they ever get it? Think through history. Did the Jews, did the children of Israel ever get the fact that just because they were of Abraham's seed that they couldn't be conquered? Did they ever figure that out? Did AD 70 happen? They never figured it out. AD 70 was when Jerusalem and the temple was destroyed for all time. Chapter 2. Okay. My time's getting away from me, isn't it? All these things are going to happen. When Habakkuk prayed, again, you go back to verses 2 through 4. How long, Lord, are you going to do? When are these things going to take place? God has an answer. Let's go back to verse 1. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower and will watch to see what he will say unto me and what I shall answer when I am reproved. I'm going to see what I hear. Here's my prayer. Now I'm going to see what God's answer is. And the Lord answered me. And he said, and by the way, he might have been in his tower, but he was a lot lower than God, wasn't Write the vision. Make it plain upon the tables, that he may run and readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. But at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. God, what are you saying here? I'm going to answer this prayer. I'm going to answer this question, but it's going to be on my schedule, not yours. And you think it's not going to come? It will come. And when it does come, then everything that you have written down, Habakkuk, everybody's going to point to this and say, yep, this is what God said. It came true. And Habakkuk is going to go down in history as a true prophet. The righteous then, verse 4, they are going to live. But how are they going to live? They are going to live by faith. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Now, what testament are we reading? This is the Old Testament, isn't it? I thought all they had to do were just the works. In other words, as long as I abide by the law and God is my God, I am a child of Abraham, I'm saved. But God has never regarded it as such. And Habakkuk is saying that. Listen, the just, those who are right before God, are going to live by faith. Do we live by faith today? Are we justified by our faith today? Absolutely. Why is that? Because that's the way it's always been. From Adam until the Lord returns, the just, those who are right in the eyes of God, live by faith. Paul, again, said the same thing in Romans 1, verse 17. Notice the four woes here very quickly. Verse 9 are the woes that are given to the children of Israel, Judah, that is. And he says, look, this is why you're being destroyed. Verse 9, woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. In other words, he's got the money and he wants all of basically everyone's possessions, so that he can set himself up in a better, just a better societal location. Woe to you. Go down to verse 12. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establish a city by iniquity. People that go and do new endeavors, and they do so at the expense of other people. Down to verse 15. Woe to him that gives his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunk also, that thou may look on their nakedness. You know, when you either take someone to get them drunk. Didn't David do that, by the way? He tried to do that. It wound up not working, but he was sinful in doing that. Why? He broke this particular concept and this law. You don't make it to where your brother can't make a decision. And when you are drunk, then you are not able to make right decisions. Because when you make someone drunk, you say, oh, here, sign right here. You defraud your brother, you see. That's evil. That's not right. Go down to verse 19. Woe to him that saith to the wood, awake, to the dumb stone, arise, it shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it. And people were doing that very thing, that they were whittling wood, covering it with precious metals, and saying, this is my God. They never got beat with that one either, did they? It never reproved them, did it? But the God of heaven was about to reprove them. As a nation, he was about to do it. Chapter 3. Habakkuk's prayer, verses 1 and 2. A prayer, Habakkuk the prophet, upon Shigionoth. O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make known in wrath. Remember mercy. In other words, Habakkuk is praying for God's will to be done. God, I want your wrath to come and make sure that those who are not righteous are punished. But also remember, when you are punishing others, that you also have mercy. Mercy to those who are innocent. That's a very short prayer, is it not? Did God listen to that prayer? He heard it because it was from a righteous individual. And God says, okay, I want you to trust me. I don't want you to reprove me. Verse 6, God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Selah. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. And his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hands, and there was the hiding of his power. Before him went the pestilence, and burning coals went forth at his feet. Notice the imagery here. The horns are representing of authority. Notice that God has the other authority, that is the kings and princes of Judah. They are in his hands. Not only are they in his hands, but notice also that the king of the Chaldeans, Nebuchadnezzar, he too is in the hand of God. Now, Nebuchadnezzar didn't realize that, because one day, Daniel talks about this, one day Nebuchadnezzar goes out and he looks at all that he has done, and he praised himself. He just reached up like this and patted himself on the back. And God said, no, we're not doing this. And he made him insane for a period of time. So insane, he had to leave the palace and leave the city and go out and live like the animals and the livestock, to teach him a lesson. No, it's not you. You see, how was that so? Because God had the horns, that is the power, in his hands. And from that, then, he was going to destroy Jerusalem and Judah. But a remnant was going to come out of that. Notice then, a nation might be lost, but I can be saved. Go to the very last verses here of Habakkuk 3 of this book. Although the fig tree shall not blossom, verse 17, neither shall fruit be in the vines. The labor of the olive shall fail, and the fields shall yield no meat. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength. He will make my feet like hinds' feet. That's like deer. And he will make me to walk upon mine high places. You see, Judah was going to go into Babylonian captivity. The Chaldeans and the Chaldean king Nebuchadnezzar was going to take away this people. And yet, we have great men to come out of that captivity. While we know about Belteshazzar, oh, you know him as Daniel. Oh, we know about Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. Oh, you know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We know about those great individuals. What about Jeremiah, who was there as the weeping prophet, who was out in the countryside of the Chaldeans, prophesying against the people of God, and yet he himself a righteous individual. You see, the nation can be lost, but the individual can be saved. I do not know about our nation, except that if it is not righteous, it will fall. That's the only thing that I know about our nation. But regardless of where our nation goes, I can be saved. I do not have to go the direction of my nation. Its thoughts don't have to be my thoughts. Its ways do not have to be my ways. My ways, I can adjust to look like God. My thoughts, I can adjust to look like God's. What does God want me to do? He wants me to obey Him by obeying the gospel, the death, burial, and the resurrection of Jesus the Christ, 1 Corinthians 15, 3 and 4. We find the obedience of the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ in Romans chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. How that we die to sin. We are buried in water, coming in contact with the blood of Christ, and then we rise to walk in newness of life. How do we arrive at that particular place? One, believes in Jesus the Christ, repents of sins, confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, and then in baptism, all sins are washed away. If you haven't done that, you can do that this very hour. If you have and you have left your first love and you need to return to Him, why don't you do that together as we stand and sing?